Hello and welcome back to TNWKS, the Now We Know show, the show where we discuss a topic of interest and by the end we will have learnt something new and hopefully you will too. I'm Zak.
And I'm Buzz. And yes, we're back in the Tower
Studio
where
once
it's actually
again.
the sun. I think the sun's come out outside because it's getting quite warm in here at the moment.
Yes.
Because we are both sitting here wearing our countryman hats.
If you hadn't noticed, if you're watching on YouTube.
I'll describe to those listening. We've got our big felt sort of Jacobean wide brim floppy hats with, may I say, very nice large cockades of feathers on them.
A cockade of feathers.
A cockade of feathers. And the reason we're wearing these hats is because it's time for us to throw our hats into the ring. Da 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 da.
Haha, so
because this week we're talking about the Cotswold Olimpick Games.
Ooh, exciting stuff. If you enjoy the Now We Know Show podcast, support Zak Wylde Productions on Patreon or join our members on YouTube for early access, ad-free content and exclusive episodes.
So this week we're talking all about the Cotswold Olimpick Games. But first,
it's time for
Weird and Wonderful,
our classic segment of the Now We Know Show podcast.
What's it going to be?
Now, I thought it would be in keeping to do something similar to what the podcast is actually about.
Right, okay.
And I didn't know that this was actually this time of year already.
What is it going to be?
The title is, we may have actually addressed this before in the podcast.
I don't know.
But the title is, Dairy-Loving Daredevils Descend on Cooper's Hill in Gloucestershire for Annual Race.
Aha, well, I know Cooper's Hill well.
Do you?
Yes.
It's the cheese rolling race.
It's the cheese rolling race.
Where they chuck a 7-pound wheel of cheese down
an incredibly steep hill.
Incredibly steep hill that's 200 yards in
200,
length.
250 yards, yeah.
Yeah.
That.
Straight down, and everyone has to chase after it, and the winner gets to keep it.
Yeah, I think there's one lady who's won it kind of like 3 times in a row.
It was about 6.
Was it 6? I know she dislocated her shoulder.
Several times,
yeah. Because it's that time of the year where these wacky kind of British traditional English sports. You know, we talk about the UK, but of course the UK is made up of England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Wales, and we all have different regional sports. You know, whether it be the Highland Games in Scotland, whether it be the Irish stick fighting in Ireland, Cornish wrestling down in Cornwall, and of course in the UK, in England itself, we have all sorts of different regional games, from backhold wrestling, catch can wrestling, bog snorkeling, which I know has been
we did address
before.
that. That was that must have been a while ago when we
all sorts of barrel rollings and all sorts of weird stuff, and of course the cheese rolling at Cooper's Hill, and that is a weird and wonderful kind of story.
That such a tradition has persisted for so long,
and that in this day and age of health and safety, that people are still willing to put their health and well-being, let's say, on the line and charge down that hill
and
for a
considering
a wheel of cheese.
It's like completely normal. Yeah, it is treated as being completely normal.
I think you've got the people that consider it to be completely normal who participate, and then the people who think this is completely mad come to watch.
Yes,
probably what it's divided up into. And that's kind of a bit like the Cotswold Olimpic Games. Now, I mentioned we were going to throw our hats into the ring.
Are we actually going to do that, or are we going to keep them on?
No, I'm going to take my hat off because, to be honest, I'm getting a really hot head. Okay, so I'm going to throw my hat into the ring. I'm going to drop it down on the studio floor.
Ooh.
Oh, that's better. Now I've taken my hat off. But that's an old English saying, to throw your hat into the ring. And I'll come back to that. But let's first of all talk about the Cotswold Olimpick Games.
Yes, that's what we're going to talk about.
So, listeners, viewers, you might have heard of them. You may have even visited Chipping Camden and gone to the Cotswold Olimpick Games. But if you haven't, that's where we're going to learn some stuff today, all about it. Now, the Cotswold Olimpick Games is the first time the term Olympic Games was used since it was used back in ancient Greece.
That's interesting.
You see, so
but it's spelt with like a K, isn't it?
It's spelt Olimpick.
Whereas now it's like ends in a C.
Yeah, with a Y.
Yeah.
That's it. So it's Olympik. Olimpic.
Wow. We should go on, was it Countdown?
No, not really. Anyway, because it's spelt in a kind of old English way. But the thing was, so it's the first time that the term Olympic Games was revived since the original Olympic Games back in ancient Greece.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that. So you're talking about time. So we've just Queen Elizabeth was on the throne, and then she passed away at the beginning of the 1600s. And a chap called Robert Dover, who was born in Norfolk, and grew up and became a lawyer, and then he moved down to the Cotswolds to somewhere called Saintbury, which is near Chippen Camden. Now, at the time, so we're talking around, say the beginning of the 1600s, you still had obviously you had a lot of people who celebrated very well-established old sort of Saint Day country revels and fetes. Yeah. But unfortunately, you also had the Puritan movement, which were trying to clamp down on people having fun, that it was wicked and evil. And also there was
I always remember the horrible histories things, and that it's like, yes, let's just eat onions
I
sad.
always remember the Blackadder episode where his aunt comes to visit aunt and uncle.
Oh yeah, with the crosses on their shoulders.
Crosses on the shoulders, crosses on their hats. It's wicked boy, And so anyway, so you got the Puritans trying to shut everything down, because a lot of these things were obviously based on Catholic saint days, and the Catholics were oppressed in England. And so what Robert Dover did was, when he moved down to the Cotswolds, there was probably a already well established country revel that was happening there at the time. Possibly was getting the wrong kind of attention because of that. So he took it over and changed the name to the Cotswold Olimpick Games to give it a kind of like a new, fresh revamp, if you like, to make it acceptable, rather than calling it maybe whatever Saints' Day it was. To make it more acceptable, to kind of take a step to the side, away from any connection to it being a religious thing. And he also wanted to make it really inclusive, so to make it inclusive for both the gentry and the common folk, so everybody could enjoy it, everybody could come together. And this was in the time of King James. Now, so because at that time, up until then, there wasn't really what you would say established sort of people who, like we accept these days. You might have watched on TV things like Time Team, etc., where people are really interested in history and archaeology and things, and that really wasn't a thing, especially when it came to ancient history. But there was a revival happening then, where people were taking an interest in reading about these ancient things, and it's because of that Robert Dover sort of hooked onto this whole idea of the Olympic Games that were held in ancient Greece, and thought, oh, this is a great idea, so I'm going to tag this name onto this event. And this event is held up on a hill above Chippen Camden, which has now become known as Dover's Hill.
Quite rightly so.
Quite rightly so. And it's a fabulous place if you ever go there, because it's like a natural amphitheatre.
That's what I was going to ask, because to preface this podcast, actually, we have been there several times.
And we will, as Jack always says, we'll get to that.
But it is like a natural amphitheatre, as you say.
Yeah, it's if you imagine like the Colosseum or something, it's almost like half of a Colosseum.
But natural. So a hill.
Wonderful bank that everybody sits on, in like tiered seating, if you like. But no seating, you just sit on the grass.
Again, it's pretty steep.
It is steep, and then you have that wonderful flat area where the games are played out.
Yeah.
But from the vantage point on top of the hill, you could see out all the way across the Cotswolds there.
Yeah, great view.
It's probably comes through the topography. I'm assuming, by anybody listening or watching this can put me right on this. I'm assuming what it was is probably maybe during the last ice age, that the glaciers, the glacial sheets pushed the hills up, and as the sheets of ice retreated, they left all that flat land that you can see out off the top of the hill, and what you're standing on is kind of like what the front edge of what was shunted up.
No, that's really cool because I never really considered
Ice
that.
Age. It's the same like at Dunstable Downs over in is Dunstable Downs Hertfordshire or Bedfordshire? I'm not
Bedfordshire.
sure. It's Bedfordshire. And so yeah, if you go up on Dunstable Downs again, you below Dunstable Downs you can just see for miles because that's where the sheets of ice are just ploughed the land flat. And then it came up against the Chilterns.
Yeah. So I have a question.
Anyway, sorry.
Obviously, Davis Hill.
Okay.
Has this event always been held there?
Well, it first started by, I mean, we don't know the exact date, but Robert Dover, as I say, was born in around 1575 to 1582 in Norfolk. And then when he took over the games, it was about 1612. So 1612 has become the date that is generally recognised as being the first date of as what we call now the Cotswold Olimpick Games. Right. And hence, if we jump forward 400 years, in 2012 we had the Olympic Games in London. So it was the UK Olympic Games were held in London, and that was also coincided with the 400th anniversary of the Cotswold Olimpick Games, which was the first original English Olympic Games.
Now that is really cool. Do you reckon that was kind of like a decision that was like actually made to make it coincided, or is it just happenstantial?
I think that perhaps that was part of because every country that goes to asked to be nominated to do the next Olympic Games, they put in their what would you call
application?
Maybe call it application. Yeah, and then they probably say you have to explain why they feel they should hold it, how they're going to hold it, that they've got all the things in place, and that probably played a part in the UK's application for the Olympic Games.
For want of a better word, anyway.
Yeah, for want of a better word. So yeah, it may well be the case, but that's fortuitous. That in 2012, at the 400th anniversary of the Cotswold Olympic Games, we also had the UK had the Olympic Games held in London.
So obviously we're going back to like the 1500s here, like
1600s when he took it over.
Okay, so has it been held every year since, or was it like a revived?
No, simple answer was no. So what happened was Robert Dover took it over, or not took it over, but established it, and it became a wonderful revel. It became King James knew about it, and I think Robert Dover also kind of wanted to feel like it had the patronage of the crown, because I think at somewhere around 1630, Robert Dover was given a set of clothes that belonged to King James.
Okay.
And so I'll pick up a picture in a minute for those viewing, and I'll describe it. But he used to then wear the clothes as if he was King James on his horse, and he would open the games, and it would give it that kind of royal patronage that he was dressed as the king in the actual some of the king's clothes.
That is really cool.
And the other, also in this heyday of Robert Dover had a revolving castle built.
What?
Yeah. So,
sorry, Al. What? Revolving castle?
There's a picture of it. This castle that it revolved, and it had real cannons on it, and the cannons would fire and it would spin around.
It's like something out of like some steampunk.
I know. It's just absolutely fabulous. So you can imagine.
Oh my god!
This amazingly built revolving castle contraption.
I need to see a picture of this
with real cannons.
Is there a picture of it?
Yeah. With real cannons, and then Robert Dover.
Oh wow.
Obviously coming onto the field in his horse. Oh, not in his horse.
In his horse.
So, I was thinking about.
It's not the Trojan War.
That's not the Trojan War. So he's riding his big charger onto the field, dressed as a king, and you can imagine the crowd there. All got all the booths up on top of the hill.
Yeah.
The booths would be tents. Tents is an old word for using for tents. So all the tents would be up there, and it would just be an amazing event. So talking about this picture. So what happened is it became so popular that in 1636 a book was written of poetry, and by a lot of famous poets of the time, and those poets basically were all asked to write poems about the games.
Ooh, okay. I didn't know this.
For this to be like a kind of to popularise the games and to kind of
kind of gives it a bit of a legacy.
Persuade people who read this to come and see the games.
Good advertising, yeah.
Yeah. So and that was called the Analia de Berenzia. Analia de Berenzia, which meant the Annals of Dover. Okay. And funny enough, ta-da! I have a copy.
Yes.
Now this is a copy I am really pleased that it's so hard to get hold of. This one was printed not back in the 1600s. This was actually printed in 1970. But even saying that, it's over half a century old.
Yeah.
And
small signs of wear.
Yeah, small. Well,
was this one of the books? Because obviously you're interested in a lot of old books and things. But wasn't there one where it got delivered and it was literally from like the early 1900s?
Yeah.
And it just got chucked over the blooming gate.
I know. I do collect very old books, especially about English country sports, because it's something I've always been very interested in. It's something that I have always kind of pioneered to, especially to bring back the ancient noble sport of English country backswording, which we'll kind of touch upon in this podcast.
That is a subject unto itself.
Yeah, we'll probably do a whole one on English country backswording as a sport, but for now we can't evade talking about backswording.
The father of backswording over here.
Yeah. I'm very, very proud that I was given that honorary title.
Yeah.
I've even had a photo of me in an art exhibition, which was called The Father of Backswording, because to explain to the listeners, it's because I reintroduced the sport of English country backswording back to the whole of Middle England and running this tournament circuit. Dover's Hill being one of the places that we'd fight for one of the cups to get to the final World Championship ones, which were held at two places, Royal Sandringham Estate in Norfolk, and prior to that at the
Uffington
Whitehorse Show. But I'm going off the but the point is, yes, I was very honoured when people started to refer to me as the father of backswording.
Still are.
Yeah, I still am, even though I'm kind of a bit more retired, but I still keep my finger in the pie, so to speak. I said once in a while I'll throw my hat into the ring. We'll get back to that. Quite literally. So anyway, the point of me bringing up backswording is because this is a country sports event, Cotswold Olimpick Games, and backswording was one of the sports that was played at the games, and we'll come to that. So anyway, so we had this book, okay, and also interesting thing is in William Shakespeare's The Merry Wives of Windsor, actually one of the lines does, and I've got it here, it's actually commented here, if I can read this. It says, here we are, it says, "How does your fallow greyhound, sir?" So there you go. "How does your fallow get me teeth in. How does your fallow greyhound, sir? I heard it was outrun at the Cotswolds," meaning the Cotswold Games. So it's an interesting point of fact that Shakespeare himself knew of the Cotswold Games and may well have even visited the Cotswold Games.
Exactly.
But anyway, so we have this book, which was originally written in 1636 to promote the games. And on the front cover of this dust cover, you have Robert Dover, who is on his horse wearing the clothes of King James. And here on the back of it, you can see there's the revolving castle. So it's a picture of this castle, which is on a column, on which it's got cannons firing.
It's actually interesting looking at some of the other pictures on that. It looks like somebody's doing a handstand on the back.
Yeah. Well, what we'll do, if I can, I'll just skip through here. So there we go. So we have...
That's a better picture, yeah.
A better picture. I'll show it to the camera. I don't know if the camera can pick that up.
Yeah.
But for those people that are listening on the podcast, it's a wood print picture which shows Robert Dover on his horse at the bottom. It shows the revolving castle at the top with the cannons firing. And then it's got other events happening. So we have like a massive banquet picnic. We've got the tentage up there. We've got
there's that
we've got
hare course.
Hounds are chasing a hare. Yep. We've got ladies at the top here. Whatever they look like, they're stitching things up, making clothes. I don't know. We've got wrestlers. We've got the.
It's like some people running down a hill.
Yeah, running and leaping down a hill. Don't see a cheese involved in that one.
Maybe we should introduce it.
Handstands, which is obviously something to do with probably some kind of gymnastics displays. Tossing the bar. It's a bit like tossing the caber.
Yeah.
Spurning the bar, which is where you have to throw it with your foot. Throwing the hammer.
Yeah.
Okay, and of course up here,
in the top right corner,
you've got two chaps there that have got what look like a sword and dagger fight going on. Okay, and that's interesting because that when it comes to the sports that were played there, and there was also cross-country running is done. We'll come to the modern games anyway. So you had all these different kinds of sports and different revels and things. So if we talk about the scouring of the White Horse over at Uffington, they used to like have again a bit like Cooper's Hill with rolling the cheese. They've got a very steep part of the hill underneath the White Horse, which is called the
it's Dragon's Hill or something
yeah, it's
like
just,
that.
But it's next to Dragon's Hill, and the name escapes me of this bit. But they used to roll a cartwheel down there, and you had to chase the cartwheel down. So it would be like similar to the cheese.
Yeah.
They also had they'd let a pig or a piglet loose on the hill.
Is that the one where they'd cover it in grease or something?
Possibly, and if you could catch it, you won the pig. You see,
great.
But obviously, you can imagine how a little piglet would
running
really fast if it's all covered in grease. And other games like trying to climb the greasy pole, where they're the grease poles, and you've got to try and get
it's such a shame that, some of these amazing things have actually kind of almost died out, and our kind of only record of them is like what is actually passed on, what we're talking about now.
Exactly. And so it's
like oral history.
So we'll come back to the different games, and we'll come back to those guys that are doing what looks like a sword fight at the top of the picture. So to answer your question about did it continue? No, it didn't. So it continued through the decades on and off, and in I think it was 1845. It was taken over because this is after what happened is after Robert Dover died, and he died in 1652. The games continued, but from what you read about it is the games continued as a revel, but then sort of kind of degraded down into like just a drunken festival.
Right, so kind of Glastonbury now.
So I don't know about it. So where Robert Dover obviously maintained and pushed this event to be wholesome, sporting fitness for everybody to do the sporting events and to basically have a great time. And I think he also was very much a case of he loved to promote physical fitness in people, especially as that being important in defence of the crown. So you wanted people to be fit and healthy.
Exactly, yeah.
So and to be competitive, and but once he died,
it's healthy competition, isn't it?
Healthy competition. So when he died, then it started to degrade into becoming more lurid. People getting drunk, probably gambling, all sorts of things happening. And in 1845. It was taken over by a local publican called William Dury, who I believe paid £5 for the right to run it. So he took over.
£5, obviously, by that standard, then it would have been a lot of money. But
and supposedly in its heyday, it had over 30,000 people would attend.
That's a big amount.
And you can imagine, without any kind of control over this, it just probably descended.
Considering, because we've been there and we've actually seen the place, that
30,000 people
is a lot of people to be there,
especially descending on the local community. And I can't speak for the Cotswold Olimpick Games exactly, because I don't know where the railways come, but when the railways in the Victorian age started to take people could leave the cities and get to places that they couldn't do. I mean, you're talking back in the 1600s, people from miles around would come by horse and cart to visit.
Yeah.
But you probably wouldn't get people from the other side of the country just...
Yeah, you couldn't just drive down.
No, you couldn't just drive down there. But once the accessibility to the countryside and the coast was made feasible by trains, that's when these country revels used to bring a lot of... and I know it sounds bad, but they were kind of like the dregs of the city life would come out to these rural places
to experience
to basically to gamble, prostitution, any way they could make money, and these things just fell.
Well, these things you're always going to have some kind of
so a lot of these
devious faction.
Of these big country sporting events descended into chaos and then stopped. So I believe the Cotswold Olimpick Games kind of ended around 1850.
Right.
Because it just became it was just,
it was unfeasible. It was kind of semi-lawlessness.
And it descended into chaos, basically.
Yeah, kind of losing its kind of identity almost.
Yeah, and that was that. It sort of died a death.
Yeah.
But
it's unfortunate.
But the land was purchased, Dover's Hill land was purchased by the National Trust in 1928.
I bet it wasn't £5.
No, it probably wasn't. And then I think it was re-established. The games were re-established around 1951, and they were kind of a small event that was just sort of played at on and off, and then until 1965.
Okay, so this is post-war.
Yeah. So 1965, that's when the Robert Dover's Game Society was established, and they reintroduced the games, and that's basically when they've pretty much run yearly ever since. Right up until today. And this is one of the reasons why I decided this would be a good subject for this week's podcast, because this year's is on Friday.
That'll be the day after this is released.
Exactly, on the 30th of May 2024.
In 2012 it was the 400th.
Yep.
What would that make this year's anniversary?
Oh,
so that would be okay. So we can work this out. So 2012.
That's the 14th, is it?
So it'd be 10 years after. So it'd be So 2012. Yep. 10 years after would be 2022. It's 2024 now. So it'd be 412th.
There you go, 412.
It's my 412th birthday.
Yeah. But anyway, so these wonderful games that were originally put in place by Robert Dover, and they exist today. Now the thing is, most people know them these days because of one particular quirky sport which is played
that's persisted, isn't it?
That's persisted, and that is shin kicking.
Oh yeah.
Yes, the wonderful grand old sport shin kicking, which
do you want to describe it? Yeah.
So and it is a brilliant sport, and
it's a rough and tumble, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a form of wrestling.
Yeah.
So when we talk about indigenous English wrestling styles, I'll say English because there are ones that are obviously Scottish, have their own backhole wrestling and things. And I will mention Cornish wrestling, although the wonderful Cornish people and the people of Cornwall don't necessarily like to be associated as being part of England. Okay, they have their own flag, although they are technically part of England as the law stands. They're not a separate country. But
anyway.
so we're talking about historically.
Yes.
So at a particular time in history, we had wrestling styles such as Cornish wrestling, Devonshire wrestling, Norfolk wrestling, Cumberland wrestling, Westmoreland.
I had
there's
no idea.
There's also they all have different. There's backhole wrestling. There's like Cornish wrestling, as well as the Devonshire wrestling with jacket wrestling, where you'd get hold of the jackets.
That's it. Yeah, you gather up the jacket.
And originally, a lot of these they wouldn't have a specific jacket. These wrestling styles might have if you can imagine, an old-fashioned farmer's smock. So it's a bit like a tunic, but it was made of smock. And the farmers' wives used to complain, that if you tore the smock, you have to fix it yourself because I'm not going to do that for you, kind of stuff. There's all sorts of wonderful tales about these things, but so the smock basically evolved into the jacket, and the Cornish wrestling jacket is made out of sailcloth. Basically, it's a really good, durable sailcloth with two ropes that run across the front of it. Okay, which again you can get hold of. In the Cotswolds, now with the shin kicking, it would originally have been that they would have worn a smock or just a shirt, and now it's more of kind of it's more like, so I don't want to call it a lab coat, okay, but if you can imagine a white lab coat, But when you go to rural events in the UK, so if you're going to these ones where you get all the rural shows and you've got all the different livestock on show, can you imagine they wear like what looks like a lab coat, but it's a livestock coat. It's a long cotton coat, but they tend to be white.
I'm picturing him.
So what they do is they tend these days is instead of wearing a traditional farmer's smock, they get you to wear one of those, and that's what you get hold of.
Right.
So in the shin kicking, the idea is you need to throw your opponent to the floor, and if you get them to the floor within the time, and I'm not quite sure of what the rules stand at the moment, but let's say it's 3 throws wins the bout, then you need to kick their leg out from underneath them before throwing them. If you just throw them to the floor, that's not a throw.
No.
You have to kick the leg out.
Yeah.
So you have the judges or sticklers, because we have sticklers which are the same as what we have in the backswording. A stickler for the rules is the referee. It's where we get that old terminology, a stickler for the rules, because it's the old term for a referee. Their word is final. So the sticklers would judge that a kick landed on the opponent's leg, knocking their leg out before they got thrown to the floor.
Yes.
So if that hopefully will describe shin kicking.
And well, talking about that, you also have to, in the modern iteration of the sport, you have to stuff your your leg trousers with like straw.
Okay, so if we're going to focus on the shin kicking, because that's what Dover's Hill has become famous for, it's the old terminology for shin kicking is purring. Okay, and it derives from the wrestling styles like the Devonshire wrestling, where it's a jacket hold wrestling, but kicks were allowed. But when you compare it to Cornish wrestling,
no kicks.
You're not allowed to kick with the feet in Cornish wrestling. You see?
Right.
And in fact, I think the Cornish wrestling in historical, I've read historical accounts where the Cornish complain about the Devonshire wrestlers trying to kick and such, which shouldn't be allowed. But in the heyday of the shin kicking at the Cotswold Games, they used to wear hobnail boots, and basically, and it wasn't unknown for them to try and harden up their shins by hitting their shins with hammers to try and toughen the skin up and things prior to it. So it's literally hobnail boots, and you would try and literally kick somebody might give up because it's just like becomes too painful.
Too painful, yeah.
What they do in the modern games, and I can't say exactly when this was established, but you stuff your trouser legs from the knee to the ankle with straw. They normally have a load of bales of straw there. You stuff them up. You can use some gaffer tape and tape up. So you've got this padding in your trousers.
Yeah.
But if you don't do it right, because we're talking from experience here, if you don't do it right, that straw just goes around to the back of your calf.
Yeah, which is not very helpful.
But you still wear boots.
Yeah.
Yeah, you still wear boots. Now,
not hobnail.
Walking boots, leather boots. I've seen people there with military boots.
I'm pretty sure people have worn trainers before.
Yeah, but that's up to them if they want to wear trainers.
Yeah.
But you know, but anyway, so with that, our involvement personally with the Cotswold Olimpick Games was that I think, you see, for all my life since I was a kid, I've trained in martial arts, and I'm a fully qualified martial arts instructor. But from the late 1900, the end of last century, so we're talking about sort of 1998 onwards, I started up a club that predominantly focused on reviving English country backswording as a sport. And as that club progressed, when we got to around about 2003, that was the first time I visited the games.
Interesting.
And obviously the shin kicking is the main event these days.
Yeah, that's what everyone knows it for.
Back in the day, it was the backswording that was top of the bill. Okay, and again, coming back to the book,
picture in the book. Yeah.
Well, there are other things in the book, and one of the things in here, if I can find one, is there should be bill. Maybe it's near the back, but I've got picture somewhere which is like a bill from the event which puts the backswording at the top. I'm going to rummage through my book while I'm talking.
Get some ASMR in there.
Yeah, So anyway, so with the Cotswold Olimpick Games, we first went there about 2003, and there was a couple of people up there that were kind of demonstrating backswording in a very basic way.
Did I come along with you? No. I would have been very young at the time.
You were very young at the time. Okay, so I found this bill now, and here we have. Show it to the camera, but for those people listening, it says Dover's meeting, and this was from 1819.
Wow.
Okay, so it's still in its heyday. And Dover's Hill, and right at the top, for 20 guineas to be played at for backsword.
Hey!
Okay.
Excellent.
And that would then followed by the wrestling and so forth, and a horse race, etc., etc. So when traditionally you fought at backswording, or wrestling, you didn't this mentions about guineas, but originally when you fought, you would fight for, and you're wearing a hat.
Oh, I can demonstrate.
You're wearing a hat and I'm wearing a hat, and these hats have got a nice cockade of feathers on them.
Do you like my cockade of feathers, everyone?
So for those people listening, it's got like a cockade of feathers, because if you can imagine, kind of Robin Hood with a hat on, it's got a feather sticking out the side. And the prizes used to be that. It used to be, if you won, you would win a new felt hat with a cockade of feathers, and if you came second, you would just get a hat without a cockade. So the idea, but the thing was,
I love it. I love it. It's so simple.
You didn't win money, so you would fight hard and you'd fight strong, and if you won, it meant that you could, when you were walking around your local community, and you've got
people would see you
hat with this cockade of feathers, they know you're a champion.
Exactly,
you know? I mean, what a wonderful thing. But as I say, as the games rolled on, with all country fetes, revels and things, they all degraded down into all about money.
Yeah.
Rather than the prestige of winning, it was all about the money. Anyway, so...
can I throw it into the ring?
You can throw it into the ring. So, yeah, when you got, whether it be the wrestlers or the backsworders or whatever, that's where you get the terminology of throwing your hat into the ring, or pugilism. You would take your hat off and everybody would throw their hat into the ring, and then the stickler would pick two hats up at random.
I can't reach.
And they were the ones that would fight each other to start with, and that's how it worked. Throw your hat into the ring to give it a go. Yeah? Anyway, so you have the shin kick in, and so going back to about 2004, we went up there, and there was a couple of people demonstrating backswording in a very, very basic way. And in fact, I remember it well, because they had one arena, and at one end you had a small group of people that were demonstrating their take on backswording, which was to just use a stick, a very short sort of 36-inch long stick with no protection on the hand at all.
Ooh, ouch.
And they had kind of like a martial arts stroke boxing foam helmet on, which they'd cable tied some garden mesh over the front and sprayed it. They sprayed them white.
Sounds like something out of Mad Max.
Yeah, that green plastic garden mesh.
Yeah. Oh.
Well, the helmets they were wearing were white, and so they'd spray painted those white. And then they were trying to smack the hell out of each other with these things in a very brutal fashion. And the paint was just coming off these things and getting in their eyes and all sorts. And then at the other end, interesting enough, there was a couple of gentlemen that were showing a depiction of what's on that picture. Now, that picture showed a couple of people sort of seeming to have a sword and dagger fight.
Yeah.
One of them is stepping forwards. There's motion in it. That's where I'm not going to talk in depth here, but there were 3 distinct types of country sports using stick fighting in England.
Okay.
One was called cudgeling, which meant that you would use a sword length wooden cudgel with a wicker or leather pot to protect the hand, and a dagger size wooden cudgel with, again, a leather pot. And that's what's represented in that picture.
Yeah.
And that was known as cudgeling.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you took the dagger one away, it would leave you with a single stick instead of double.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's where we have the term single stick, which was another form of play, which was called single stick fighting. And then you have backswording, using the wooden backsword, which is like you have a wooden bokken for practicing sword fighting in the Far East to replace a live blade. In England, we had a single-edged sword known as a backsword, and you would use a backswording cudgel as your training weapon, and it was those training weapons that we used for backswording. And so we went to watch that, and the following year, or possibly the year after that, so 2005, 2006, the Cotswold Games, the wonderful committee down there, they're wonderful people, always have been. I take my hat off to them because they're brilliant.
You already have.
I already have. You guys are absolutely fabulous, and you do a sterling job every year. Anyway, they contacted me and said, the person that used to do it has gone kind of like
AWOL.
AWOL. They don't know how to contact him or anything. They knew that we did it. Can we come down and do it?
Yeah.
And so we did. We went down there, and we were really, really thankful of being given the opportunity to bring backswording as it should be done back to the Cotswold Olimpick Games.
That historic site, yeah.
To be there on that historic site, walking in the footsteps of giants, of these countrymen.
It's history making.
The countrymen that used to fight in the heyday. To think that people, like William Shakespeare may have walked across that field up there.
Yeah.
It was just such a wonderful feeling, and it has such a wonderful sunset, doesn't it? There.
And considering if like in the future, like 100, 200 years, imagine there could be other people doing podcasts.
Yep. Talking about us
doing that.
In fact, funny enough,
that is like creating a legacy, which is fantastic.
So we started doing the backswording there, and that became one of our tournaments, our regional tournaments. As I said briefly, I'm not going to talk about the backswording too much in this one.
You sure?
Although you feel like okay, but that was one of our regional tournaments. Whoever won the King of the Hill tournament at Dover's Hill then got a place in the World Championship finals, which we held once a year, and also whoever got silver. So you get two places. Two people would go through to the World Championships, because
exciting.
Just like at Dover's Hill, it's the World Shin Kicking Championships. Yeah,
of course.
Okay, so we used to hold the World Backswording Championships. Anyway, getting back onto the shin kicking. So there we were doing the backswording, and then we decided that let's throw our hat into the ring and let's train up and go in there and do the shin kicking. And so in 2008, that's what we did. And in that year, I didn't compete, but some of my students did. And one of my students, an absolutely fantastic chap called Steve the Bulldog Williams, won. In fact,
amazing.
I think at the same time we had Rory McGuinness, it's
Paddy McGuinness.
Paddy McGuinness and Rory. I can't think of his surname.
I can remember it.
But they were there because we got photographs of them, and
they were recording a documentary about.
They were doing a documentary. Oh, that might be in a different year, but there was a couple of people there that were writing a book at the time, and bless them, they gave us a wonderful, like almost like a
dedication
dedication in one of the chapters all about the shin kicking.
Wow!
And so that's part of history that's
so cool.
down there. But anyway, Steve, bless him. He had a fantastic tournament. He went all the way through. He won it to the jubilation of thousands of people on the hill.
That must have been such a spectacle.
And he couldn't believe it. He won it. He's just like, this is brilliant. It was brilliant for me as his instructor to see him go through and to win it. And then the next thing he knows, he's being interviewed by an American radio station, I think from Texas. And he's like in the guest lineup with, like world famous boxers and things. Like,
amazing.
It's like
brilliant.
This is crazy, absolutely crazy. And so that happened, and then the following year we said, right, we're going to go back so Steve can defend his title, and we can more of us can give it a go and see if we can. If Steve doesn't defend his title, one of us might win it, and it'd be great fun. So we trained up for another year. 2009, we went back, and interestingly enough, 2009 was the first year that a lady went in it, as far as we know historically. At the moment, nowadays they have a ladies' tournament and a gents' tournament.
Yeah, but at that point they didn't.
They just had the men's tournament. Or I say the men's tournament.
It was just the tournament.
It was the tournament. It was just basically only men went in for it.
Yeah.
But your mother,
my
wife Tina, she said, no, I'm going to do this. So she went in there and she really did give it a good go.
Yeah.
She beat the first guy she beat. concisely, and then she took it right to the last, literally the last fall with the second one. But she did brilliant. Okay, so brilliant, in fact. That
this is a hilarious story. Yeah. I've got to let you get into this.
Well, firstly, I'm holding the 2000. What's this?
2011.
2011. So this has actually kind of jumped forward from 2009. But in 2011, Guinness Book of Records, there in the top. I'm just opening it up here. There's a picture of Tina in the shin kicking tournaments.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I remember discovering this.
Yeah.
It was year 7 at school. Like, our form room was a library.
Yep.
And what we would do just in kind of like before we'd start going to lessons and things, we'd just have a flick through a couple of the books, Guinness Book of Records, just to see what was in there, and it was great fun. But then it might have even been Jack, because he was there at that point. But we noticed this picture of the shin kicking because I'd obviously brought it up a couple of times just casually in school.
So he said, "Oh, Zach, look, there's a picture of shin kicking."
Yeah, and I was like, "Hang on a second.
That's my mum.
That's a ponytail there.
That's
my mum." And everyone was like, "What?
What? Your mum's in the Guinness Book of Records?"
Oh my god, that was awesome.
So yeah, so
kudos.
So Tina gets into the Guinness Book of Records. We find in 2011, and then
it gets better.
It gets better because then at some point an episode of QI. So in the UK we have a program called QI. I'm sure it's worldwide. Everybody knows about it. Google it if you haven't.
It's kind of like the Now We Know Show podcast,
like
isn't
the Now We Know Show. So you got QI.
After scores at the end.
It's quite interesting. So QI comes on and they got an episode called
Location.
Exactly. And so it's going all about these different locations. And then, bizarrely enough, it comes up with Dover's Hill as a location, and then they start talking about the Cotswold Olimpick Games, and then boom, because I have these massive big TV screens behind the panelists.
Yeah,
there's this picture of Tina shin kicking.
Yeah,
and there's your arm.
My right arm's in the background. This little red T-shirt,
red top you got on.
Yeah,
but there's your mother on this massive
centre screen
on QI. In the shin kicking, and then you got the panelists, especially there was a lady panelist, and the lady panelist is saying something along the lines of, "Yeah, well, there you go.
That's proof.
That's proof that men are stupid.
You'd never
get a woman doing that.
Like, you're saying that right there.
Right now, when you've got this massive 6-foot picture of a woman.
And it's like, oh my god, that's hilarious.
And I actually emailed QI after that show.
You did, didn't you?
And I got a reply back saying thank you for pointing that out. The fact is, I pointed out that it was a woman that was actually shin kicking on the screen at the time. So yeah, that was fabulous. So, total kudos to Tina for being in the Guinness Book of Records as well as getting onto QI for the shin kicking. But myself, I'm going to have to toot my trumpet. So we went back there, and unfortunately Steve didn't win. Okay. Steve didn't win.
You can't win everything.
But my competition didn't go quite as planned.
I wonder how.
Yeah. So one thing is to have a cup for winning.
Yeah.
But another thing is to have a Robert Dover's Games cup,
which he's brandishing right now.
Medal, okay. Yeah, a bit of sound effects there. Ooh. Oh, look at that! I've polished my cup and I've got my Dover's Hill medal. Look, with Robert Dover on it.
Wow! Yeah, it's literally like the picture.
Yeah, it's got he's on his steed with his James I clothes on. Anyway, so I got this cup and medal because I'm the first person in recorded history to actually fracture their ankle while shin kicking. Okay.
Oh man, I remember this.
Well, I'm right in the middle of this tournament, and I'm booting away, and my opponent's coming at me, and I got to say, okay, no disrespect to my opponent, but he was a smaller guy compared to me, and I thought, yeah, I'm gonna have this easy. This is a good one for my first warm-up bout, and so I've got hold of him. I mean, because we're training every week.
Of course,
let's face it, we're training every week, and every week we've got like cricket pads on that we're booting the hell out of each other and getting the throws perfected and everything. And so
all consideration, like the stats are in your favour at this point.
At this point, and I'm thinking, right, I'm just going to let him wear himself out, get him puff. He's lighter than me. I can easily throw him, so I let him wear himself out, and then we literally just swung around, didn't we? But my foot didn't. my foot caught because the ground there is a bit sort of tufty with
turf.
We're not talking about a lovely football pitch field.
Well, that was something much later. We did the backswording there, and I remember we went down into that kind of lower section of this amphitheatre that was so uneven, that ground.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So it was uneven. And as we swung round, my foot didn't come with me.
No.
And literally, my foot just snapped off. Both, ankle bones.
Yeah.
Ow. My foot, I just sat down and picked my leg up, and my foot is...
That's not good.
I've got my trousers full of straw. Everything's bound up with gaffer tape, and I'm wearing brown walking boots at the time, and my foot is just flopping around.
You couldn't write this, could you?
It's just flopping around, just held on by the flesh of my ankle, and it's like, I remember myself going, like this, and so of course at that point I'm out the tournament. And
I didn't see you continuing.
I hopping around with a so then the guys are medic, because they run in like this, and they're trying to put my foot into this kind of like inflatable cast. And then he walked past and kicked my foot.
Oh no!
It's like saying out of a sitcom. It was like, sorry.
Yes, this should be a British sitcom.
Anyway, and then I got to be honest. The committee have been wonderful for me. They have always considered me to be. They've said it themselves. You were like a VIP to us. They come down any time. They've been really good to us over the years. And I remember being on that stretcher, and it actually, apart from the initial kind of snap, at the time it didn't really hurt. I imagine
memory. Like adrenaline.
Yeah, the adrenaline is pumped up. I think I was more just annoyed that it happened.
Yeah, probably.
Because it didn't happen through being kicked.
Yeah.
It just happened because of just a fluke thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've got the evidence. We've got it on video. You'll have to track it down.
Yeah, you have to stick up on this podcast. Just flash up a couple of pictures of my injury,
of the resulting injuries. It was the operation, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because you've currently got plates in your legs.
I've got titanium plates and bolts and everything still.
You are a Frankenstein's monster.
Thank you. And anyway, so I just remember being on the stretcher and being carried off the field and having thousands of people there all stand up, give me a standing ovation. They're all, yeah! It's like, okay, I haven't won exactly, but I have got my point in history here. And every year going back from there, they always, I've been there when the St John's ambulance guys had to go in there and say, you should have been here that year. That there was a bloke here that fractured his ankle once.
Fun fact,
that had to be me. But I remember going to the ambulance and heading off to hospital. And then when I got to hospital, that was the funny thing. I got to hospital and I'm there in the A&E, and my trousers are stuffed full of straw.
You look like a blooming scarecrow.
It was stuffed full of straw. And they're having to cut my trouser legs off and cut the gaffer tape, and there's straw going everywhere. And then they stopped, and they went and got all the doctors and everybody who were on duty to come, and you're not going to believe what's in A&E. It was hilarious. But anyway,
wasn't that around? It was one of your birthday parties. We had something organised.
Oh no, that was. It was 2009. It was Tina's 30th birthday.
Was that it?
And the point was, we were meant to go to a restaurant the next day and everything, and it all had to get cancelled, which was unfortunate. But there you go, because I was stuck in the hospital over the other side of the country. But anyway, but I got my medal and I got my cup,
your prize.
Yeah, and I got my place in history.
Yes.
And unfortunately, although I would love to have gone back and done the shin kicking again, I just didn't think that your mother would never forgive me if I did it again.
I've still got one leg intact.
Yeah, I still got. But and the other downside to that, it's a small downside. I mean, I was on crutches for months, and eventually, add on to the story, I was actually doing my PT, my personal trainer qualifications at the time. I literally just qualifying. I think I had a final exam for that when I fractured.
I remember, yeah.
I had to take all my martial arts lessons as an instructor on crutches with my foot in a plaster. But when I went to the hospital to have the initial plaster taken off and changed, they couldn't get the plaster off, and I was sitting in the corridor, and the nurse said, I don't know what we're going to do. We have to come back. I can't get the plaster off. And I'm looking at my watch because I had my final exam.
Oh, my God.
I thought it was going to be a simple case of going to the hospital, having the plaster taken off, new one put on, go to the exam. But I'm sitting there, and about an hour and a half gone by, and nothing's happened. And I happen to have my Swiss Army knife in my jacket pocket, which is a legal carry. Okay, it just happened to be in my pocket at the time, and I got photographs of me where I've actually been much to the amusement of other people who were sitting there waiting in the hospital. I actually got my knife and cut the whole plaster off my leg. When the nurse came back, she was like, "Oh no, what have you done?" I said, "Can I please have the next plaster there?" I've got to get to the exam, I got to the exam, I passed, I qualified.
Hey.
But yeah, it was the other thing was I'd also booked in with the wonderful people down in Cornwall, Cornish wrestling event. And so I went down there, and again, I had to be on crutches, so I didn't get to do the Cornish wrestling with the Cornish Wrestling Association. But we went down there, and
we have done it subsequently, haven't we?
Subsequently, apart from that, look, I've also got my T-shirt from the year. This T-shirt is the 2012 Proof 400th anniversary, and on the back it says, "Get your shins kicked out of you." It says on the back of the T-shirt. Yeah, and I did.
Well, one of them.
Yeah, so absolutely brilliant. So what can I say? So shin kicking is the main event now over the backswording, and the backswording, unfortunately, I think that has now waned because I retired just after COVID. So we continued the backswording up until I think it was about 2018. And then I think a friend of ours took over doing the backswording there. Then COVID hit, and I don't know if anybody actually is doing the backswording if you go to the Cotswold Games now.
We would love to know if you're going on Friday.
If you're going this Friday,
please let us know in the comments.
But let's give it a plug. So Cotswold Olimpick Games at Davis Hill, just outside Chipping Camden. Yep. I have got what you've got now is you've got, as far as the games, you've got the shin kicking. Obviously, anybody can put their name down because that's the shin kicking world championships. You've got Champion of the Hill, where I think you've got 3 different events. I can punch in on that, where you can sign up for that, and you've got, let's see what the Champion of the Hill's got to do. Yeah, so it's throwing the hammer. It is spurring the bar, which is a bit like, as I said earlier,
caber toss, isn't it?
Caber toss, and the static jump. So again, they're references
to standing broad jump.
Yeah, so it's references to the old picture from that book.
Right.
So, and then you've got a team event, which is much like It's a Knockout, okay, which is the Championship of the Hill, which is a team event, so they have to do all these kind of stuff. And then you got the good old tug of war. We did the tug of war one year as well, didn't we?
Yeah, I remember that. I do. But this is it's a tug of war story. This is 6th form at school, right? And we had this tug of war competition. It was sports day event, and I was with the group of people that was like the film people. So I was in like a class specialising in film stuff.
I would never have guessed.
Fun fact. And we managed to persist all the way through this tug of war competition, much against the odds. As I was known for being a pretty strong person at that time. I was like the anchor at that point. And the final was the PE classes against the film class. So these are the people that specialise in all the physical activity, the sporty people.
Yep.
And we won.
Yeah.
And I was like, kudos to me.
Kudos to you. Were you the anchor man?
Yeah. And I was at the front a couple of times as well, because it was kind of like a knockout competition.
I'd stick you as the anchor man generally. Yeah. But anyway, so if you're going down to the Cotswold Olimpick Games, you've got all these different wonderful sporting events. You've got the amphitheatre there, so you can, and a wonderful sunset, because the sun sets.
Just got to experience it.
Just got to experience a brilliant sunset. They normally light a beacon, so they have the fire. They have fireworks at the end of the thing. They do have a castle there, but rather than a revolving castle with cannons, it's like a frontage of a castle, which the champions and everybody go through. You've got up on top of the hill. You've got the booths. You've got different arenas. Usually you have kind of like dance shows and demonstrations of things. You've got some fairground stuff up there as well.
Yeah.
Lots of food places. It's probably my most favourite country sports event that I've ever been to. And round it off, I'm going to jump in there, Zach.
Okay.
One thing we haven't mentioned is at the end of the games. So the games have finished. The champions have been crowned. The fireworks have gone off. The sun
Everyone's
has set.
had a lovely
the
day.
beacon has been lit.
Gondor calls free.
Yeah, everybody's had a fantastic. And then you have this most amazing fireworm.
Yeah, I was going to mention that.
It rounds off with basically a torchlit procession. It's one of the few places in England that I know of that still has a proper flaming torch procession. So you can buy torches up on the hill.
Yeah.
And you can become part of that procession. We always refer to it as the fire dragon, don't we?
The
fireworm, because it's like a fireworm. If you see, I think people have used drones and things in the past few years, and you can like see it, and it's just like this fireworm coming off the hill,
crawling through the countryside.
It's absolutely amazing, and we used to be there with our swords, saluting the guys.
So it starts at the actual hill, and then kind
top of the hill and
goes down into the
into
town.
Chipping Camden.
Yeah.
So it's a fantastic event. Highly recommend it.
Yeah.
Wonderful committee. They do a
And
stupendous job. They need the support.
A unique landscape as well.
Unique landscape.
Like, there's nothing like it.
Whole place is beautiful, and the committee works so hard every year. So go over there and support them and enjoy an amazing event.
Yes.
There you go. So that, hopefully, you would have learned something about the Cotswold Olimpick Games.
Yeah.
Yay!
Do you reckon we're going to go back in a couple of years, maybe?
Possibly. I mean, obviously, things move.
Because it has been a while since we've been there.
Yeah, I would love to go back and say hello to everybody and go and enjoy the games again.
I wonder if we could do like a Now We Know show on the road show.
Yeah, we could maybe we could do a live
something
broadcast.
We can organise. That'd be great.
Exactly. That would be super.
Live commentary. We all remember the World's End podcast where we did like a live commentary of some fighting. So it'd be interesting. Wondering whether or not we could like do a commentary on the shin kicking, although it'd probably be a bit loud.
So that just leaves us with one thing, doesn't it?
And what's that?
That is
Wisdom of the Week.
And I've been trying to find a Wisdom of the Week, which is kind of fitting for kind of traditional English country revels or something.
Okay,
like that.
I'm interested to hear what you come up with.
I've come up with this one. Okay, it does make sense.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
But this one kind of takes you back to the Uffington, the Scouring of the White Horse.
Ooh, okay.
Where it says, "Never wrestle with a pig. You'll just end up being covered in crap, and the pig enjoys it."
That's like words of wisdom for life, isn't it?
So you can apply that to so many things.
So many things. Oh my god!
So we've had a fantastic time. I'm going to see if I can grab my hat. I'm going to put your hat back on.
Yeah.
Okay. We've had a wonderful trip there. We've enjoyed that. We've been there for the 400th anniversary.
Great time reminiscing.
Yes. I'm sitting here with my
cockade of feathers.
My cockade of feathers.
Your
and
champion cup.
My cup and my medal.
Yeah.
Yay! Thank you, Dover's Hill. You're amazing, guys.
Yes.
And that's it.
Yeah, so stay tuned for a further podcast in the future talking about backswording, because we haven't mentioned it enough times in this podcast.
What do you mean, backswording?
Backswording.
Yes,
backswording. We're not going to talk about it that much, but we're going to do a podcast on it, so
Yay!
Stay tuned for that. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe to this channel and comment below any suggestions of topics or activities you'd like to listen to in future episodes.
And we'll see you in the next one. That's it. I'm going to throw my hat in the ring again. Goodbye from Buzz.
And I'm going to also throw my hat into the ring. Goodbye from Zak.
Goodbye.
You can find the Now We Know Show podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music and Apple Podcasts. Keep up to date with everything ZWP on Facebook and Instagram, or visit the Zak Wylde Productions website at www.zakwyldeproductions.com. And remember to join us on Patreon or become a YouTube member for early access content and exclusive episodes.